October 23, 1822, London. A crowd gathers at the docks as the luxury vessel Honduras Packet clears port, carrying dozens of wealthy British investors and eager settlers toward the Caribbean. The passengers possessed official land grants, government commissions, and sovereign Poyaisian currency, having exchanged their lifework of British gold for the promise of an untouched paradise. The entire sovereign territory was a physical mirage, invented by a single man inside a rented London office. The architect of the illusion was Gregor MacGregor, a highly decorated Scottish general who had recently returned from the South American Wars of Independence. MacGregor claimed that a local indigenous king along the Honduran coast had granted him sovereign authority over a resource-rich territory called Poyais. Appointing himself the cazique, or Prince of Poyais, he established a high society legation office in the heart of London. The British aristocracy responded with absolute compliance. MacGregor weaponized the intense investment boom of the 1820s, a period when London investors were desperately chasing high-yield opportunities in the newly liberated territories of the New World. By selling thousands of acres of non-existent land and securing a massive £200,000 sovereign bond from elite financial institutions, MacGregor single-handedly orchestrated the largest individual confidence trick in history. He had discovered a perfect systemic loophole. In a market blinded by the fear of missing out, you can sell an entire country without anyone demanding a map. To sustain a multi-million-pound deception against the world's leading bankers, MacGregor targeted a critical operational vulnerability: the absolute lack of rapid transatlantic communication and the market's total reliance on prestige over verification. In the early 19th century, verifying a geographical claim required a multi-month sea voyage. London's financial elite blindly assumed MacGregor's documentation was authentic because of his immaculate military uniform and his high society connections, entirely skipping direct verification of the physical geography. MacGregor exploited this corporate laziness by systematically manufacturing an alternative reality from his desk. The administrative logistics were fastidiously executed. He commissioned a 350-page guidebook under a fictional pseudonym, detailing the intricate infrastructure of the Poyaisian capital, complete with grid-mapped streets, a grand theater, a domed cathedral, and rivers overflowing with pure gold. He designed official Poyaisian government bonds and hired musicians to play traditional Poyaisian songs outside his legation office. To make his fictional paper legal tender, MacGregor contracted an official banknote printer in Edinburgh, producing thousands of pristine, beautifully engraved Poyaisian dollars. He then established a land office, charging British settlers hard gold in exchange for beautiful, worthless parchment deeds. To the elite, a mosquito-infested patch of uncharted swamp had been visually and legally transformed into a high-yield sovereign asset. The architecture of the deception sustained itself for over a year because the London press and banking houses frequently praised MacGregor's sovereign bonds as the future of international trade. The illusion finally shattered due to a grim physical intervention: the arrival of the settlers. In early 1823, two successive waves of British ships arrived off the coast of Honduras, searching for the bustling ports and stone government buildings detailed in MacGregor's guidebook. The passengers stepped off the boats and realized the math had completely collapsed. There were no cities, no banks, and no infrastructure. The land was an isolated, uninhabitable shoreline of dense jungle and malaria-ridden swamps. Their beautifully printed Poyaisian dollars were worthless paper in an empty wilderness. The settlers refused to believe they had been defrauded by a British general, choosing to camp on the beach waiting for government officials who would never arrive. Within weeks, tropical disease, starvation, and exposure decimated the camp. Over two-thirds of the settlers died on the sand, clutching useless land deeds. In late 1823, a passing British naval vessel discovered the survivors, triggering a massive international rescue mission and launching an immediate inquiry. The exposure of the Poyais mirage triggered an immediate systemic collapse across the London Stock Exchange, sparking a massive panic in South American sovereign bonds and destroying multiple elite investment firms. When the news of the mass deaths reached London, the architecture of the fraud completely fractured. The British Navy intercepted remaining settler ships to turn them back, while federal authorities launched an investigation into the legation's finances. But MacGregor was a master of psychological exits. Before the warrants could be executed, he fled across the English Channel to Paris, entirely evading British jurisdiction. The French authorities proved just as vulnerable to the illusion. Within months of his arrival, MacGregor began printing a new French edition of his Poyais guidebook, establishing a secondary legation office, and organizing a new round of land grants for French investors. Though French police eventually arrested him for unverified passport documentation, he was ultimately acquitted of fraud, leaving his victims with zero financial recourse. The Poyais scandal permanently altered the regulations of international sovereign debt. It proved that the ultimate vulnerability of any financial system is not a complex algorithmic failure, but an industry that values the illusion of status over physical reality. It left behind an enduring rule for modern markets. If the greed is intense enough, a single operator with an engraved printing plate and a handful of fictional maps can manufacture an empire right up until the wilderness steps in.